everyone. How are you? Welcome. Welcome to another story time about my dysfunctional life and all. So lately I've been going to therapy. For longest I had like a psychiatrist that was prescribing me medication because I was like, I don't think I need therapy. I have a really great support system. I have an amazing man. I have amazing friends. I have amazing supporters. Every time I get mad, I just go rant on Discord and you guys just be like, oh my God, B, you know. I need to start a Patreon soon. Comment down below. What should I offer on Patreon? Anyways, when I decided to go to therapy, I started realizing that I was unraveling really bad and I started to ruminate really bad. And ruminating is basically when your thoughts just keep going and going and going and going. You just can't like turn them off. And this would happen to me a lot at night. And it would be bad because like say I'd be tired. Like by 10, 11, I get really, really tired. And for whatever reason, I still end up sleeping at 1, 2 o'clock because I just can't turn my brain off. And it got to a point where not being able to sleep would turn into a slew of other issues because if I can't sleep, then I get cranky. When I get cranky, I don't get work done. I don't get work done, I get mad at myself. When I get mad at myself, everything just falls apart. I'm a Capricorn. Y'all know the deal. When we can't get work, it's like, oh my God, the world is falling down, okay? Well, we can't get work done, child. It got to a point where I just realized I was having like numerous mental breakdowns and I couldn't necessarily talk to anyone about it because I could not explain how I was feeling because I felt like anytime I did try to speak to anyone about how I was feeling, I felt like they would be like, you're depressed. Like it was like they would think that I'm joking. They wouldn't take it seriously, or they just thought that I was just having a bipolar moment. If you guys do not know, when you're bipolar, like literally one day you're extremely happy because you might be in a manic state, and the next day you're probably crying and you want to die because you're probably in a really bad depressive state. So I don't know. You know, it was just not working. The only person that really understood me was my man, and he has his own issues. He also goes to therapy. So I was like, you know what? Let me start doing therapy sessions again. Now understand, a psychiatrist and a therapist is two different things, and most of the time a psychiatrist would not necessarily give you therapy sessions. They just there for your meds, okay? They just be like, your med's working, girl? Oh, all right, good. That's about it. A therapist is more so gonna go in depth about your life and talk to you about how you're doing, how you're feeling, how you're managing things. So really, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start going to therapy again. And what's really interesting about this is before I started going to therapy, I never really thought there was really an issue. I thought I had worked through all my issues. I was like, you know what? I feel like I've gotten to a place where I have everything I wanted. I'm financially where I want to be. I'm in career-wise where I want to be. I'm relationship-wise where I want to be. I'm friend-wise where I want to be. I'm everywhere I want to be. Like, I don't understand why I'm constantly having mental breakdowns about shit that don't even make sense. So I started to feel ungrateful. I started to feel overwhelmed. I was so confused. Like, I don't think you guys understand. Like, I was just like, this shit don't make no sense. It was like, I started to feel really crazy. You know, I was like, yo, like, there's something wrong with me. Maybe it's my meds not working. Like, maybe the meds is not like, little preference if you've never seen me before, I do have bipolar disorder. I have anxiety disorder. I have ADHD connected to my binge eating disorder, and I do have a little bit of PTSD, which PTSD could be, you know, a lifelong thing, but for me, it's not necessarily lifelong. It actually has a lot to do with the holidays, but I fought through it a lot, so I haven't had any like PTSD, like flashbacks or anything like that, and I've never been on meds for that. I'm currently on meds mainly for my bipolar disorder. I take anxiety medication only when I feel like, you know, a situation coming. Like when I feel anxious, I pop one, but I don't take it often because it does kind of interfere with my bipolar medication because it just makes you really, really drowsy. And then I don't take anything for my ADHD, mainly because none of them work. I've taken a DNA test and everything, and all the meds I have taken literally not only did not work, but even on my DNA panel, none of them work for my specific DNA body composition, whatever the case may be. So it's a waste of time. Don't even try to suggest anything that is a medication because, child, I don't like to smoke, so please don't suggest weed. I might actually try to do it again, but I don't like to smoke, so maybe I'll try edibles. Yeah, I'm just sitting here like, so any vitamins you guys can suggest would be great. I do use magnesium a lot since I can't really use my anxiety meds like that because they make me really drowsy. I take it at bedtime with my bipolar medication. So when it comes to my bipolar disorder, I feel great most of the time. It doesn't necessarily, I don't really feel anything ever since I've been on medication. I'm usually pretty stable. Even when I get mad, I can't get as mad as I want to get. That shit makes me mad. Does that sound right? Like, I hate it sometimes. I'm like, fuck, I wish I wasn't on these pills right now so I could go the fuck off. But I mean, I guess it's good, you know, so because I'm not, you know, out here bashing skulls and like back in my youth, you know. So I will say being on medication versus not being on medication, I will say being on medication helps because it does keep me way more stable. But I would say I do prefer not being on I do prefer being on medication, only because it does keep me more stable and it keeps me way more productive. But not being on medication, I feel way more myself. But when something happens, it's bad. I will say it sucks when something happens. Like if something hits the fan, if I get stressed, if anybody makes me like even this much mad, I take it 0 to a million really, really fast, especially if I'm under any type of stress. I think for me, I just need to really work on my stress management a lot more, and I'm just not really good at that. So until I'm good at that, I'm gonna just stay on the medication, right? Now, when it comes to medication as well as therapy, it could be a very long journey for some people. I had to fire a psychiatrist. I had to fire therapist a couple of times in my past. This time, this therapist, bomb.com, okay? The psychiatrist I had the first time was giving me medication that was making my eyes blur, okay? I was going blind. I think I did a story time on that. I might link it down below if I remember. But this one, she's a black woman. She was great. And then my therapist, she's actually a Hispanic woman, and right on the dot, I loved her from the get. And what was interesting is she would ask me things that I never been asked before and I never thought about. And one of the questions that she asked me was, you know, have you ever went through any neglect or abuse? And I was like, no. And she was like, are you sure? I was like, my parents never hit me. My parents never necessarily abused me from what I can think of. But then again, and I started thinking, and I'm like, wait, you know, now this is the thing, right? I've always been under the impression that the extent of my issues was living in the hood and dealing with a father that had a gambling issue and parents that were financially irresponsible and just genuinely didn't give a fuck to be accountable for their actions. I kid you not, for the biggest part of my life, that's all I ever acknowledged, okay? I don't know if it's that I had so many bigger things to worry about, such as homelessness, just ain't shit men that I've dealt with, just the stress of going to school and stuff and just being successful, because you know I'm a Capricorn, that's all I care about, that I never thought about other underlying issues that I've went through. But that's all I ever thought about in terms of issues that I had, and I kind of worked through all of that. Yes, seeing people get shot at, seeing people die, getting beat up for being Haitian and all of that, yeah, it was traumatic, but I'm kind of over it. It's just a funny story now. Not funny, but funny. Not funny, right? So I'm like, yeah, and I just start unpacking all of this to her. And this is why I always tell people to go to therapy, because there be some things that you think you got over that you didn't get over. There be some things that you think don't affect you that affect you. There's some things that you don't even recognize are an issue that are genuinely an issue that stick in your head that affect you every day. So I start unpacking these things to her, and I'm telling her about my upbringing. I'm telling her about, you know, how I was as a child, how I grew up and stuff like that. And she's like, and I start telling her about how, you know, my parents always worked a lot when I was younger. This was before we had money issues, of course. And my parents would constantly like leave me home alone when I was 4, 5, 6, you know, before I was old enough to stay home by myself. And my therapist looked at me like, your parents what? I was like, yeah. And she was like, that's not normal. That's neglect. You know, they actually mention it to me all the time like it's funny. Like to this day, y'all, my parents, especially my mom, will laugh about it. You know, you were such an independent child. You were such a smart child that we would just leave you alone in the house. We would just tell you to leave the TV on and don't open the door for any strangers. Now, what's crazy about this is, to this day, I cannot be alone in my house. This is actually making me emotional. I cannot be alone in my house without the TV on or without my phone playing something, like a YouTube video or something. And I never understood why. I thought that I'd just be bored. Like, I thought I just couldn't focus. And it just, and like, for whatever reason, recently she said it to me and I got a flashback. I was like, what the fuck? And for her, and this is the thing, I can't really blame her because she really doesn't see anything wrong with it. And she mentions it all the time like it's a joke. Yeah, you know, that's not okay. You know, like Dyfus could have came at any time and just pulled me out of the home. And I remember being really scared sometimes because, as I mentioned in one of the story times, my uncle will probably have to be a whole video, how, you know, he had that crazy girlfriend that would threaten to shoot the windows out. So I remember being scared that she would probably do something or try to come to the door or try to call Dyfus because I was in there. there. Yes, as young as 5 and 6, I knew what the hell diapers was. I was a pretty advanced child. I watched too much Maury, sorry, you know? I knew a lot for my age, right? So I was sitting there just thinking, like, my therapist is like, yeah, you know, they should have never did that. And I was like, yeah, there were also times where, like, say we would go to the gas station and I would like wander around the store picking my stuff and they would like forget me at the gas station sometimes. And they would, yo, I kid you not, my therapist was like, oh, Yvana, yeah. Like, she didn't know what to say. Like, she didn't know. I'm like, yeah, now that I think about it, I guess that's considered neglect. That is definitely considered neglect. And I started to really have flashbacks of sitting in my house by myself, watching TV, being terrified. Like, say when they didn't pay the rent, there would be times where the people would come knocking on the door, looking for the rent. There'd be times my dad owed people money, they would come knocking on the door looking for the rent. I don't know, I must have just buried all these memories in my mind. I must have, because I'm sitting here like, oh shit. The only memories I remembered was people in the hood getting beat the fuck up in front of my door. Okay, I had the memories of literally applying pressure to wounds and having blood on my hands. I remember stuff like that, but I didn't remember being left alone in my house like that. Like, in terms of like people knocking on doors and being terrified and having to keep the TV on and just like being scared. I didn't remember any of that until she like literally jogged my memory, and I'm like, oh shit, like this is bad. I'm like, this is why I can't be in my house without the TV on. Literally 99.9% of the time I have to have the TV on to fall asleep, and that's not okay. And that's probably why I'm usually asleep so late. Like, I try to get in bed at 9 p.m. It still doesn't work. I'm still falling asleep at 1 o'clock, and it fucks with me because my medication for my bipolar, I'm supposed to take it early, like 8-9 o'clock, but I'm fighting sleep. I'm sitting here fighting sleep because I'm like, yo, I cannot, like, I have to turn TV on in order to fall asleep. And I never noticed why I did that. I thought I was just bored. I swear to God, I chopped it up to being bored. That was the first session. I remember it was like my first session to kind of cope with everything that was going on in the hood, like people getting shot up and just all the craziness. Everybody who knows me personally knows I always sang, I danced. I was very involved in school, from elementary to middle school to high school to college. I was always involved. But one thing I will say is my parents absolutely never showed up for any of that. I invited them to shows. A lot of times they were off and they did not show up, and that hurt me like hell. I didn't even notice that they didn't show up until teachers would bring it up to me, and they would be like, oh, where's your parents? And I'm like, they had to go to work. I would just be like, oh, they work. I kid you not, there's some teachers to this day that don't even know what my parents look like. They showed up to graduation though, because that's Haitians. One thing about Haitians, they gonna say, oh yeah, look at my kid. Look at what they're doing. As if they supported anything else that you did, right? And you guys are probably like, well, Yvana, you went to Catholic school. At least they paid the tuition. Barely. There's lots of times I sat in the motherfucking office because my dad wanted to give away my tuition money. So next, okay? And ever since then, we've been working through that. And then, you know, when it came to the abuse situation, I believe we talked about that the second session, right? So she's like, you know, have you ever been through abuse? And I was like, again, you know, parents never hit me. She's like, wow, you're Caribbean? Wait, you're Haitian? Your parents never hit you? Never put a hand on me? Never, you know, my parents, I guess, don't believe in that for whatever reason. But yeah, they never hit me. Their parents hit the hell out of them. But, and they were like, okay, but there are different forms of abuse. And again, I started unpacking my life. I started talking about how we were homeless. And I started telling her about how I ended up moving out finally because my dad had the nerve, gall, audacity to ask me for rent money that he allegedly lost after he was already months behind on rent. So basically he was asking me for 1, 2, 3, 4 months worth of rent. Well, honestly, money that I was like, where do you think you about to get it from? And I was telling her how like they'll do things like ask me for $40 here, $50 here, $100 here and not give it back. And she was like, that's financial abuse. Now, there's a lot of people out there that will denounce therapy and they're like, oh, well, not everything's about your parents, not everything's about, you know, your childhood, not everything. I'm like, listen, first of all, that's my adulthood. Second of all, 99.9% of things are due to your childhood. The way you treat people, the way you handle yourself in your romantic relationships, the way you navigate shit, your jobs, a lot of things is due to your childhood, believe it or not. The parents that you have, the people that you deal with, the people you're around, a lot of it. You can look it up. I'm not making it up. And a lot of the times it makes a lot of sense. It's just that a lot of us bury it. And a lot of people that sit there and denounce this are people that are parents themselves, 9 times out of 10 doing shitty jobs themselves, and they don't want to be blamed for their children's shitty ass behavior. At this point, I started thinking like, damn, are my parents really out here financially abusing me? Every time my parents would just ask for money, I just make sure I went to go get it. I would no questions asked, right? Until I actually moved out. But even after I moved out, I was still, anytime they asked for money, give it to them. I just give it to them. I'd be like, oh, you got a 20? I'd go get the 20. Oh, you got a 50? I gotta go get the 50. Anything. But then I started, after she said that, I started to pay attention. I would give my mom $100. She would send that shit straight to Haiti and then ask me for another $100 in a couple of days. And I was like, is she fucking serious right now? There was one time she did that shit to me. Like, she literally asked me for $100 specifically for something for work purposes. And I gave it to her. And then she called me up saying that she needed more money. And I was like, I literally just gave you money. Like, I don't understand. She's like, oh, well, I had to send it to Haiti because they needed it. I'm like, but you needed it. I don't understand why you think that makes sense. And she was like literally like yelling at me because I wouldn't give her money. I had to think back and I was like, what the fuck? They've been doing this to me my whole life and I never noticed it. Like, as soon as I was able to work, they've been doing this shit to me. From when I was making like freaking $7 an hour to now that I'm making way more. Every single time I would go to my parents' house just to visit for the day, I would be bleeding money. And I'm not joking. Like, I literally would spend $300 every time I went there, and I used to go there every week. I would be bleeding money. Say if we're just going to like the supermarket. Supermarket turns to Walgreens. Walgreens turns to Fish Market. Fish Market turns to 99-cent store. 99-cent store turns to this, that, and the third. Oh, let's go eat to the buffet. Before I know it, I'm out $300, $500. Also for college, I paid myself through college. I said that in my last story time with my sister's situation as well. My mom only helped me with the first semester, mainly because she did end up losing her job. But when she picked up another job, she did not help me. My dad did not help me, and he was working. No one helped me but me. Okay, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. And it's crazy because my friends noticed it. I did it. I remember I had said it to Cynthia. Cynthia was like, yeah, bitch, they always taking your money. I'm like, why I never noticed this shit? Like, why I never noticed this shit? You know, so at this point, I was like, okay, so I had another therapy session. And I'm like, yo, yeah, I'm being financially abused. I'm being financially abused. And I've talked about this before. I don't know if this video is gonna be out before my vlog, hopefully, because that vlog has to get out. Like, it's been sitting much for a minute. But my dad hasn't worked since the pandemic. He lost his job right before the pandemic because like his job was being sued or something. And then ever since then, he refuses to get a job. There's nothing wrong with him, okay? That prevents him from getting a job. He sits there, he expects me to pay his phone bill. He expects my mom to give him money when I give him money. He literally just wants to sit on his ass and not work, okay? So he'll do this manipulative tactic where he'll be like, he'll ask my mom like, oh, did she give you money, and try to get it from her? Or he'll like try to like dry beg and shit like that. And it's like, bro, now it's getting to a point where like now I'm really opening my eyes about this type of shit, you know? And it's starting to genuinely annoy me. And it's like, I've been so emotional lately and I just don't want to be around them like that. Like, I just don't. Like, I do go see them, but not as much. Like, I used to make it my business to go see them at least once a week. Now I probably see them twice a month. I just don't want to see them. I ended up moving them. That's gonna be a story time that comes out very soon, and it was a shit show. They were just very ungrateful. I paid for like literally 90% of it. I didn't even get a thank you, really. And mind you, I moved them to the best part of Elizabeth. They was in the hood, in the gutter, literally seeing people get shot across the street, and now they're in the best part of Elizabeth, and every day it's a new fucking complaint. So it's like, yeah, the financial abuse is real. You know, the emotional abuse at this point is low-key real. When you're dealing with Caribbean, foreign, especially Haitian parents, it's hard because it's like, can you necessarily blame them for not necessarily understanding 100% what they're doing? Or do you just hold it against them because they're adults and they should understand it? Or do you not? Like, it's hard, right? So the next thing was, you know, I remember I decided to open up about body shaming, right? So a lot of people, it's no secret, my whole life I've always fluctuated in weight. One day I'm really, really skinny, next day I'm bigger than usual, whatever the case may be. I always fluctuate in body weight. I've talked about this before on my main channel. At this point, I'm kind of just used to it. But it's always something that bothers me when kind of people like point it out. I just don't like it because I do have a binge eating disorder, and it really does manifest itself when I'm really under a lot of stress. Either I really, really don't eat, or I eat a lot in like a couple of days, like in a span of a couple of days, and I'll gain like 5 to 10 pounds like that. So it really bothers me when like I'll go to my parents' house and they automatically like, oh, you're getting fat, stop eating. Oh, you getting big, what are you doing? Oh, you look bigger than da 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 da. And they do that all the time to me. So eventually I told my mom straight up, don't comment about my weight, because it's usually my mom. My dad almost never. He's only commented about it one time that I can count. My mom, every time I see her, she says something about my weight, every single time. So I told her like straight up, don't say anything. And she started laughing. I'm like, it's not funny, like don't say anything about my weight. And she was like, oh well, if you're getting big, I'm supposed to tell you. I was like, no, what you're supposed to do is encourage me, because I'm actually trying to lose it, and more than likely what you're saying is hurtful. So don't say anything about my weight. Like, I swear to God, that's what I said to her, but I said it in Creole. So like, she's never said anything about it ever since, which I'm shocked about. So I'm happy that my therapist encouraged me to stick up to her, because I would have never did that. And funny enough, she actually told me again, like, you know what, since that worked out, you should actually confront them about the neglect and the financial abuse. When it comes to the neglect, it was interesting. So I decided to confront my mom one day when we came back from grocery shopping. I was like, you know, it's very interesting how you and my dad absolutely think it's funny that you guys used to leave me in the house all the time by myself, unattended when I was like 4, 5, 6. She's like, oh, well, you know, you were so independent, you know, and luckily no one ever saw you. And again, she's thinking it's funny. And I'm like, that's not funny. Like, I don't think anything, there's nothing funny about that. Like, I would never leave my kid or anybody's kid in the middle of anywhere, like any house, you know, unattended. That's just like really problematic. She's like, yeah, that was wrong. And that's all she had to say about it. I was like, then my dad, I literally tried to have the conversation with my dad. You know what my dad did? Sat there watching Facebook videos. Got it. Literally just showing me some like freaking video of some video gameplay on fucking Facebook. Like, he didn't even give a shit. And I'm like, you know what? These niggas. So then with my mom, I moved the conversation. Mind you, I had this 2 different times. With my mom, we was in the car. With my dad, it was in the house. So with my mom, I moved the conversation. I was like, okay, so why is it every single time I invited you and my dad to my performances, you guys never showed up? That's not true. We showed up to all your performances. I said, that is a lie. That is a lie. My mom's sitting there like, oh yeah, that's a lie. No, we did. I was like, no. You probably went to a concert or 2 in which I was not doing a solo. But when I had talent shows, when I had debuts where I was the only student, and like little conferences and I was singing, you did not. And she's like, no, I vividly remember, you know, like, you know, those situations, you know, like when, you know, we had to, you know, like she was literally like stumbling over her words. And I went to Catholic school, and the thing is, back in the day, I don't know if they still do this, but in Catholic schools, they have this whole situation where like you have to clean or you get fined. Like, parents have to come and clean like every Friday, like certain parts of the school, or you get fined. She tried to use that. She was like, yeah, I remember, you know, we used to come and clean all the time. And, you know, like, that's how I know I went. I'm like, that's not a show. That's cleaning. That's community service. That's what you had to do in order not to get fined. Oh, well, I remember coming and you were singing. I said, no, it wasn't solo. It was not a solo. It wasn't a solo. That's the shit where all the kids was singing. He was not obligated to come there. And she's like, yeah, I don't know. You know, all that money we paid and da da da. I was like, you see, I don't know if you just don't know about this, but I'm gonna tell you this right now. There's numerous times I sat in the office and didn't get to go to class because father did not pay the tuition. And she was shocked. So I guess she didn't know. She's like, excuse me? I was like, yeah, he didn't pay the tuition numerous times. And I guess you didn't know, because looking at your face, you didn't know. And yeah, so I don't know what all this money, I don't know who ended up paying. I was like, maybe this person, because like there's somebody that used to bring me all the time to school who was a family friend's father of mine who ended up passing away recently. He ended up paying some time for me in order to go to school, whatever the case may be. Or maybe my dad gave him the money, whatever the case may be. I would see him coming to the school and paying sometimes, and I would end up going to class, right? And she's like, what? I can't believe that. Do you remember when he didn't give you Chinese food and you were hungry? Deflection at its finest. First of all, that man's dead. Shut up. He's dead now. Rest in peace. Second of all, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. That's some shitty ass shit. He didn't give me Chinese food when I was hungry, but that's for a whole nother story for a whole nother time. That's not what we're talking about. And third of all, like, what in the, like, the lack of accountability. Now we start talking about that whole situation with the Chinese food, and then my mom started talking about how my dad liked to fake sick in order to refute responsibility and all of this goofy shit. Just shit that literally had nothing to do with the neglect at all. Nothing to do with how she didn't show up to my shows at all. So then I was like, even for college, I just don't like how I just genuinely felt alone all of my life. I know I'm an only child, but like a lot of the time you guys weren't there, and that's problematic. Even for college, I had to pay most of that myself. No, we helped you pay a lot of your college. I said, if you say that again, I will never talk to you ever again. I paid for a lot of my college. Better yet, Sunzia helped me pay for a lot of my college. You didn't help me pay anything but a semester. Not a year, a semester. Granted, you did lose your job, but then when you got your job, you did not pick up to help me. My dad had a job for all that time and he did not help me either. So do not dare tell me either one of you guys helped me through college. I helped myself. You didn't even help me my master's years later when everybody was working. So please don't do it. Now I got all these damn loans because mommy and daddy didn't have anything planned for me, you know? Didn't have anything saved up for me, and they want to take all the credit for my accomplishments. Play with me again and say that you paid for this shit again, because then we're really gonna have an issue. So she sat there silent, and a lot of you guys may think that's aggressive or whatever, but again, I'm getting to a point where I'm unpacking my trauma. And I think that's probably why, on top of me just being genuinely overwhelmed, I think that unpacking my trauma and unpacking the shit that I've genuinely been through is starting to make me mad. Like, it really is. And there's times I'm just randomly just doing nothing and just things pop up in my head and I'm like, oh fuck, like, okay. And I'll just want to cry. I'll just want to break shit. Just can't believe that. And all I want is a genuine care, concern, and an apology, really. I don't know what I thought I was gonna get out of that, but an apology would have been nice. An acknowledgement of what you did would have been even nicer. Couldn't even get that. All I got was deflection. All I got was deflection. I told them straight up, I'm like, I'm tired of you guys. Like, I told them straight up, I was like, I'm tired of you guys. I feel like I'm taking care of you like I'm the adult. And I don't like how the roles have switched. I don't even have a man to take care of in a household. Like, I'm not married. I have a boyfriend, but I'm not married. I don't have children. You guys have become my children. And I don't even get any gratitude. And this came after me moving them in and them being like ridiculously, blatantly disrespectful the entire time. And hopefully that story's out first. I don't know which one's gonna be out first, but this came after their blatant disrespect. Like, when I'm telling you disrespect, like, that's when I started to realize, like, yeah, there's something really wrong with them. Like, bro, like, that shit took me out for the count. Like, I was so sad. Like, the whole month of April, I was just sad and crying and sad and mad. Like, my man got me a cake that told me I was appreciated. Like, that's how sad I was. Like, he had to give me a whole cake. Like, that's how sad and depressed and disappointed I was. I was just like, so, like, that really opened my eyes. And usually I'm a very vigilant person. I'm usually very, like, on game. But this shit just really, like, caught me off guard. Do you give people grace when you know that they genuinely don't know any better? Or do you just keep your distance? Or do you just try to heal from it? I don't know. Because I don't know where I go from here. This shit's just genuinely annoying. Because all a bitch wants is a thank you and some common sense being used. That's all I really want. Common sense and a thank you. It's really sad. So I do definitely hope that a lot of you guys will take something from this story. One, go to therapy. 2, confront your demons, confront your parents, confront your friends, your family, whoever else is disrespecting you. Because 9 times out of 10, you'll probably be surprised what the fuck comes out of it. The first confrontation with my body image and stuff like that, body shaming, that actually worked out pretty well. The second, confronting the neglect and shit like that, yeah, that didn't really work out too well. But 1 out of 2 is better than none, right? So with that being said, make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, do all that. Comment down below. I'd love to hear your stories about confronting your family members, your friends, or anyone else in your life about anything that bothered you and how it went. With that being said, like, share, subscribe, do all that, and I'm gonna see y'all next time. Bye. Make sure you check the description box for everything that you guys always ask me about. Go subscribe to my 2 other channels and watch this video right here.